with the team that they have this year, if they're not playing for a Big 12 championship on the first weekend in December, they'll be disappointed.
I don't know why you wouldn't think that way with what they bring to the table, with the consistency of the coaching, the returning players.
Hello and welcome to another Three Mile Pod. No John today, but DY and I have got you covered with one of our favorite guests we always have on, Wyatt Thompson, the voice of the Wildcats on the K-State Sports Network and member of the Kansas Broadcasting Hall of Fame, is with us today as we preview K-State football. Maybe we'll touch on a little basketball and just maybe we'll have some fun with a couple questions going down memory lane with Wyatt and get a little off topic there. And we're going to dive in with Wyatt in just a minute. But before we do just that, we want to remind you, as always, that kickoff is approaching in just 3 weeks, and we're 3 weeks from the start of K-State football season, and that means you're running out of time to get stocked up with Holiday Distillery products for your tailgates or watch parties. Well, you always hear us talk about the Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Original. It's a favorite of mine. We want to remind you of Holiday's Soft Red Wheat Bottled and Bond Bourbon as well. The Holiday Soft Red Wheat is the same 6-year-old bottled and bond process, but they sub in soft red winter wheat to mash bill for a lighter, sweeter version of the classic Ben Holiday. They've got multiple great options for your palate over at Holiday Distillery. Make sure you go find a bottle at your local liquor store. And look, if you're going to be in the game in Ireland, order a drink of Holiday Distillery's Five Farms Irish Cream Liqueur, a fresh dairy cream from five family-owned farms, expertly blended with triple distilled Irish whiskey. You can also pick up a bottle here in the U.S. at your local liquor store. I've got a couple bottles down in my basement bar. And speaking of Holiday Distillery, Threema and KC Sports Network are hosting a watch party at the historic Holiday Distillery location in Weston, Missouri for K-State's season opening game versus Iowa State in Ireland. Doors are going to open at 10 a.m., kickoff at 11 a.m. Central for just $25 for 21 and up. You'll receive a welcome cocktail from Holiday Distillery, tastings of the aforementioned Five Farms Irish Cream and Holiday Bourbons, as well as food supplied from our friends over at Batch Elder Family Farms, includes hamburgers and hot dogs. We'll be hosting a live pregame show from the distillery, as well as a live postgame show. The link to find out more and to purchase a ticket is linked in the description of the show. Kids that are, I say kids, 20 and under, $10 to get in, and 5 and under, free admission. So if you want to bring one of your kids over, it'll be a little cheaper. It'll be free. I know my son tags along with me to all the games and watch parties, so he will probably be there as well. Wyatt, that was a lot. What's your excitement level for August 23rd to get here and for the 2025 football season?
Well, you know me, I'm always excited, but for whatever reason, this one kind of has you bubbling over a little bit early, doesn't it? And I think early is the key thought there, because we are starting so much earlier with we're, as we speak, 6 practices in. Get back at it tomorrow after an off day today. You got the week 0 start. You've got Farmageddon in Dublin, Ireland. I mean, why wouldn't you be excited for that? I am very pumped up about it. I mentioned off air to you guys that I talked to my Iowa State counterpart, John Walters, today, and I can assure you they are excited. I just love the matchup, man. I just do. And to kick off the season like this, yeah, I get it. People are concerned about winning the game, but let's go see where we sit. There's going to be 11 games after that, and probably more than that. So let's go see what happens. And I'm really excited, even more so than normal.
What an opportunity for the brand, if you do win, especially to be showcased on the national stage with everybody watching those games, Wyatt. I mean, everybody that's starving for college football. So a major opportunity for Kansas State, Iowa State as well, but hopefully it's K-State that we're talking positively about after the game. I want to look back real quick to last season. And as we think back to 2024, what's something that sticks out to you that if K-State can improve in 2025, that they maybe struggled at in 24, they could be playing in a Big 12 championship?
Boy, that's a really good question. It's probably not one that I've given a lot of thought to be honest with you. I think they had a lot of great things happen, no doubt about that. Another 9-win season, you win a bowl game, all of those things are great. Had guys drafted again, all of that. I just wonder, looking back at it, if there was just a skosh more help with Avery, maybe it would have been even better. If you go back and you look at the games that K-State was not successful in, there aren't very many where you say, well, they didn't really have a chance of that one. I mean, they totally outplayed BYU and Provo for the first quarter and a half, and yet they were in a pickle at the end of the half, right? That could have been a game, Now, you could also argue, well, they won late at Boulder and all of that, and that happens. But for me, it's a hard one to answer because I think back to some of the things that we talked about. Avery throwing 25 touchdowns as a sophomore. Nobody had ever done that. The productivity of DJ Giddens and that. Again, I'll go back to what Stan talked about a lot. It was one of the most productive offensive teams in K-State history in terms of yards per play. And yet, with that said, I think they can be better in 2025. I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea of what's on my mind there.
Yeah, and I'll let DY jump in here in just a second. But to your point, Wyatt, I mean, most explosive offense in school history in terms of yards per play, but from a net points per drive standpoint on offense, like when you look at the efficiency, 2.55 points per drive, which ranked around 40th in the country.
Yep.
When they were top 15 the year before at 3.03 points per drive, it really boiled down to me to, can they limit turnovers? And more, there's never a timely spot for a turnover, but the DY and I have talked about it a lot. The turnovers occurred at the worst spots of the field. I mean, they set up the opponent for easy scores numerous times last year. And then special teams, it was just little mistakes that, shifted games in the margins that were so costly last year that if they can clean up, that they definitely could be playing in Arlington. DY, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, Wyatt, I'm sorry.
I was just going to add to that and just say this. We were talking a moment ago off air about the fact that almost half of the games in the league last year were one-score games. And there's no reason to think it's going to be different now. Those teams that are going to go 5-1, 6-1, or something like that in one-score games are the ones that are going to be in Arlington, or at least knocking on that door. 2 years ago, Iowa State wasn't there. Last year they were, right? So we'll see. It's a great point on your part.
No, half the games will probably be one-score games, and especially I was looking at there's that stretch where they played with TCU, Baylor, obviously not Iowa State, but
Tech.
They're 3 or 4 game stretch where you anticipate all of those being one-score games, probably played consecutively. I guess a good question, or maybe a conversation to have, is where have they made the progress to be better in those types of situations?
Well, I think you start with Avery Johnson because he's been through it once. And I do think, this is just my personal opinion, we'll see if it's true. We'll see if it pays off and plays out. I believe that K-State has more help for him this year than they did a year ago, which is a hard statement to make without DJ Giddens. DJ's production was off the charts. There's no doubt about that. But if K-State is enough better in the pass game with the wideouts that I think they can be, and I'm excited about some of those new faces, then I think you have a chance. This is no knock on Connor Riley, but Matt Wells will not be a first-time coordinator, right? And he has a terrific relationship with Avery in that quarterback room. I think he's going to be a guy who wants to play different ways. They're not going to try to reinvent the wheel. They're still going to try to be physical and run the ball, but I think there are times when they're going to throw it around the yard, and I think there are times when they're going to play at a pretty quick pace and those types of things. Hopefully that's enough to get you through. We'll see.
2 things that come to my mind with that answer is that means Jerron Tibbs probably becomes one of the more important players on this team, because in order for this passing offense to maybe reach the highs that we think that it can and kind of be better than last season and carry them in a way, he has to be that bona fide star next to Jace Brown, so to speak. And on top of that is the rushing game. We talked about not having DJ Giddens. Cole and I have had this conversation. I'd like to hear your commentary on it as well. We think it's possible that not only does Kansas State not have a 1,000-yard rusher this year, I think that's on the table, where no one rushes for 1,000 yards, but Avery could be the leading rusher.
Yeah, and here's the thing, we do not have DJ Giddens, and I'm saddened by that to a degree. What we do have, in addition to Avery, is guys like Dylan Edwards and Joe Jackson. And I think you could throw in a couple of other guys there. I'm not sure yet what Antonio Martin's going to do. I don't know that any of us know for sure.
Right.
But I also think Devon Rice is going to get more tries this time. I'm a real big fan of Dylan Edwards, but who isn't? But I'm also a really big fan of Joe Jackson. I think this could be a really interesting year for Joe, given the opportunities that I think he's going to get. I don't know if you guys feel the same way or not, but almost look at you go back to Deuce, the first year that DJ was the backup there. I mean, the guy had over 500 yards rushing, and it was pretty quiet. I think you could have 2 500-yard guys on this team, or you could have 3 500-yard guys on this team. Is that stretching it too much? I don't think so. It depends on that offensive line play a lot, honestly.
Could have 3 700-yard guys, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. I again, Avery's talents are quite special in the run game, and you got to be careful. You don't want to get him hurt, but the fact that he has some games under his belt now and has been the guy, you feel good about that.
I know some of it was due to health last year, and he wasn't always healthy, and they didn't want to project that into the world. I get that. So that they kind of concealed it to an extent. But looking back on it, his longest rush of the year, and Cole pointed this out in a conversation we had, was 33 yards. Now, in hindsight, that's pretty surprising, right?
Well, it is to me, because I see a lot of practices, and I see the guy rip up a 50-yard run about every day.
Right.
Just being honest about that. And I think he's more than capable. When we talk about Avery taking another step, okay, I even think that part of that belongs in the run game. Most people want to talk about, the release and the footwork and, being a little bit more accurate with the passing and stuff like that. But there were times last year when I think he got down where he could have gotten a little bit more and still protected himself at the end of the play. Yep. I'm hopeful that we'll see more of that in 2025. And if you do, you'll see those yards rack up a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I think about a play like at BYU last year, Wyatt, and it was one of the first drives of the game in case I was controlling the game, and Avery was in the open field. And I don't know if you remember the play, but he cut it to the outside, and he gave the defense the boundary. There was a one defender. It was the safety isolated one-on-one. And Avery went to the outside. He gave him an extra defender by giving up the boundary there too. And if he cut it back in the middle, which comes with some experience too and increased instincts, could have been like an 80-yard touchdown run potentially. Or, 60-yard run. And so like it's plays like that when you think about like his longest run being 33 yards, which if you had told me that going into the year last year, I wouldn't have I would have expected. I had visions, different runners, but you covered L. Roberson. You called his like 90-yard touchdown run against Nebraska. Like I had visions of a couple of those types of plays.
We can see him this time. I really do. Yeah, that's the interesting thing too. Speaking of Will, there that I look back on his career at K-State. It's funny. He was just a winner in every way for me. I think I couldn't possibly say anything bad about the guy, and he was always. I always used to say this about Colin Klein too. People didn't think that he ran all that fast, but the guy was 6'4.5", 6'5", and those strides were long, man. He was getting there a lot quicker than everybody thought. And I was a big fan of L, of course. He was the quarterback the first 2 years I was here, and loved everything about him, man. He could run. He had a lot of shake to him. He worked for extra yardage. He played hurt. He did everything that you'd want in a quarterback. So, yeah, we've been blessed with some awfully good ones here.
But the funny, I mean, we all wouldn't, like, Will's a great player. He's a national champion, but, like, nobody would, mistake Will for being the fastest guy in the world. And we were looking back at it when we recorded earlier today, Wyatt, and we're like, Will had runs at K-State of 69, 70, 71, and 80 yards, as you'll probably recall. And, like, to think that, like, he had that number, and Avery last year, his longest run was 33 yards, and he still ran for 605. Yes. Like, if you sprinkle in some of those explosives, then
you're up over 8.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, I was going to ask you, like, I'll put you on the spot here. Like, do you think K-State has a 1,000-yard rusher this year?
I think they could. I'm going to say yes, the interesting part for me is it going to be Dylan Edwards? Is it going to be Joe Jackson? Is it going to be Avery Johnson? That's the real question, I think, because we know they're all capable. And I don't want to put too much pressure on Joe. He's still a young player, but he's had enough on-field experience, and he fits. And what I mean by that is he knows he belongs. Talent-wise and confidence-wise, I think the guy is there. I'm a big fan of Joe's, and I'm hoping we see that a lot this year. I'm going to say yes, but it wouldn't surprise me if all of them hit 700 either, just being honest.
That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story, like Brain Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Brain Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Folks, nothing beats hanging out with the boys on a hot summer day and watching some baseball. And the simplest way that you all can get in on the action is to download the Pick 6 app from DraftKings. It is crazy simple. Just pick more or less on the stats for 2 or more of your favorite players, and boom, you're in the mix for big cash prizes. And the best part is, Pick 6 is available right here in Missouri. Don't miss out on the fun. Don't settle for a smaller payout. Switch to Pick 6, and right now, new customers can get $25 in bonus picks with their first deposit of $5. Here's what you got to do. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and then use code KCSN. That's code KCSN for new customers to get $25 in bonus picks with their first deposit of $5. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Void where prohibited. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit. Bonus picks expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Well, Dylan's an interesting case study because, he finished with 7.4 yards per carry, which is phenomenal. But 196 in the bowl game when he had 20 touches. He didn't have more than 10 touches combined in a game until the bowl. And so you think about the explosive factor. And, I was looking through his game logs earlier today, Wyatt, and, 23% of his total runs went for 10 yards or more, which is a pretty incredible number. 17 of his 74 rushing attempts, 10 yards or more. But still, like, those big home run plays didn't really occur until the bowl game. And so you sprinkle in some more of those, and there's a real likelihood that he could get to 1,000 yards as well. He's gotten bigger. He's stronger. One of the questions we've talked about on the show is how many carries can kind of the lead back handle? Because you covered DJ, you've seen Deuce. Those guys for the last 4 years, over 200 carries each. Deuce Vaughn had 293 in 2023, Wyatt.
Think
or
of
2022.
Yeah, and that's really quite amazing when you think about it. I remember way back when people questioned whether Darren Sproles was durable enough to have, 20, 25 carries a game. And then, Deuce, that even caught me a little bit by surprise, having that many carries. You kind of forget that. As I get older, these years blend together, right? You have to try to get them separated out. He was a marvelous talent, though. And the point of that is if you know Dylan and his work ethic and what his body looks like now compared to what it did the night of that 196-yard game against Rutgers, he's a better football player now than he was then. I'm convinced of it. stronger. No question about that. He's really had a really nice offseason, I think, in getting ready to play in this season.
Speaking to some numbers in the past that kind of make you shake your head, you can't really recall. And I know this doesn't even come close to the Colin Klein stratosphere of what he did while he was the quarterback at Kansas State. But I was looking at the 2019 season because it was Chris Kleiman's first season. It was the only other year where they really did a running back by committee approach. They had James Gilbert, Jordan Brown, a little bit of Harry Trotter. But Skylar Thompson actually had the second most carries that year, and he led them with 11 rushing touchdowns, which I wouldn't have taken him for doing that.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at that, and I'm impressed that you were studying that and looking that up, because you don't think that way with Sky, do you? You just don't. I wouldn't have put a whole lot of money on him having 11 rushing touchdowns in a season here. That's how you kind of forget as time goes on. But I go back to what we were talking about before. I'm really excited about Matt Wells. I'm excited about the pieces that we have. I want to see these guys get off to a good start. They're going to have some growing pains, and it isn't going to be perfect right out of the gate, especially when they're playing a team like Iowa State. But in terms of potential of what they can be, if things work out for them and they stay healthy, my excitement level is I hope it's not too high, but it's pretty darn high. I'll say that.
I've thought this is going to, well, almost that it needed to be the year for the offense, and I've thought it's kind of been ahead of the defense for most of the offseason, as the defense probably has a little bit more to replace, especially in the back end. And to that point, and you brought up the Iowa State game, I mean, what about the Cyclones do you think could give Kansas State the most problems? We can talk about that game just a little bit, because I know this time of year you're actually studying probably the other Big 12 teams as much as you are K-State.
No doubt. If I'm not trying to impress anybody here, but I'm going to tell you, if I had to do the Iowa State K-State game tonight, I'd be ready to go.
Yeah. That's awesome.
In terms of Iowa State and their personnel and what they are. You know, what impresses me about them is, first and foremost, much like Avery, Rocco Becht is a really fine player. He wins games. They believe he will be better this year than he was last, and that's a little bit scary. They always have a team that has good balance. Here's the thing for them. How do you replace those two pro receivers, right? And last year they were not good in run defense, which sounds crazy, but that was reality. I think they were 15th in the league in run defense. For them to get back to the title game, I don't think they can do it that way again. They'll have to be better. And I think they have a chance to do that. Dominic Orange up there and several other players. Linebacking core for them last year decimated early. Decimated.
Yeah.
The Willett kid who didn't even play the whole year, he was injured in the spring. So like K-State, I think they feel like not only are they going to be pretty good, but maybe they're a little bit undervalued, and they feel like they're better than they were a year ago.
Yeah. I'm not there yet on Iowa State personally, because I do think.
Well, there are questions.
Yeah. I wonder about that offense a little bit.
Yep. Sure. Well, losing those two, Higgins and Knoll, if you look at their combined numbers in the 2 years, and I was afforded the ability to listen to Matt Campbell's presser the other day after 2 practices. And he was asked about replacing those guys. And I was so impressed with what he said about those guys, in that he said they're pros. But they were pros last year in every way here in what they did. The seriousness of how they went about their job and their work, all the way down to weight training, nutrition, all of that kind of stuff. And they were leaders. And you guys know, every year is different. The leadership of this team at K-State will be different, I believe, than it was a year ago. How different will it be? As an example, I think they're expecting Avery to be more of a vocal guy this time than he was last year. So that will be different. We don't have an Austin Moore. We don't have a Brendan Mott. We don't have a Hadley Panzer. Hard to replace those guys. So who steps up? I think Coach Kleiman, and you guys heard him the other day, I think he feels like there are more guys that can play maybe a little lesser role, but still a large role, if that makes sense. Hope it does.
Yeah, I mean, Noel and Higgins being gone is huge. I mean, what, 2,100 plus combined receiving yards just last year alone, Wyatt, both second, third round picks.
It's like, okay, you guys losing those three.
Exactly. And
That's
so
Iowa State's also kind of notoriously a slow starter.
Yeah, well, in August, September, now granted a couple August games, I think, mixed in, and then September, Matt Campbell at Iowa State, since his time there, he's 18-17 overall in those months. And they also snuck out like 3 or 4 games against Northern Iowa that were like overtime 3 6-point games, right? And so
Feels like every time they play Northern Iowa, it's a 1-score game. Yep.
They lost at Ohio in 2023, a MAC school, and they've had some early season struggles. Now, K-State hasn't gotten off to a 4-0 start, but they've, in the Chris Kleiman era, but they've had some success early in the year. There's been a couple hiccups in there, but against teams that were probably better than we expected going in. Iowa State, what's interesting about them, aside from losing the receivers, is you mentioned Wyatt, the linebacker play. They lose 3 of their top 4 defensive linemen. They got Orange back up front. And they already, as you said, they were 126 out of 134 FBS teams. They allowed 5.5 yards per carry last year, which is so uncharacteristic of a John Heacock defense, right?
Question.
And now, though, the strength that they get back because of the injuries they had a linebacker, those guys are back now. Will McLaughlin, Caleb Bacon, all those guys. So they are like 6 deep at linebacker on their 3-3-5. So it'll be interesting to see if they're able to overcome the rushing game struggles by having those guys back and how much that impacted their run defense last year, because that could be something that K-State could look to exploit, in game 1. And then their secondary, they were decent. They were pretty good. Jeremiah Cooper, Miles Purchase, those guys, Cooper's back. They had a solid secondary, but they lost 4 of the top 6 guys back there. And so there's concerns about the back end of that defense too. So both teams are going to have some question marks. I mean, K-State secondary, which kind of leads me to my next question, Wyatt. Like, I'm not going to say concerned, but is there a position group like game 1 when they take the field, K-State takes the field in Ireland, that you're going to really be honing in on and have a watchful eye on, that, you're eager to see how they perform?
Corners.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because when you were talking about Iowa State, and I again referenced talking to John Walters, the Iowa State play-by-play guy today, he talked about Bo Freeler. Hard to replace him.
Yeah.
Like we're talking about hard to replace Jacob Parrish, right? I mean, Jacob Parrish was a hell of a player at Kansas State. Now, with that said, you're going to miss him and that experience. Same with Keenan Garber. But I'm a really big fan of Zayshawn Rich. I think he's going to be the next really, really, really good corner at K-State. I think there's decent quality competition there. I'm also a fan of McIntosh. I think he's got skills. Kenigel Thomas, Jaden Rowe, Justice Clemens.
Yeah.
Been working.
The guy that changes his name every year. Yeah.
Yeah. And I asked him about that the other day. I said, "Are you Clemens again?" And he just grinned from ear to ear. And I said, "I got it. I'll get it down." Just like VJ changing from 19 to 7. Yeah. I said, "I'm old, dude. Don't do that to me." He says, "I'm doing it." Yeah. But I really think they could be good at corner, but it isn't going to be a finished product out of the gate. And I think we all understand that. But I think corner is the biggest question. And then on offense, the offensive line. It can they get George back in a decent amount of time? And can they, knock on wood, keep John Pastore, healthy, because he can play both sides, tackle left and right. I think we need to keep Taylor Portier healthy, and he was last year. Sam Heck, same kind of thing. Those kind of guys, Line Gang, all of those guys are quality players, and I like what they've added. I think you have some young guys in the program. I'm really excited about Gus Hawkins and what he can bring, and Kyle Rockers. So there are people there, but it's varying degrees of how ready they are.
Wyatt, you were on the show 2 years. I mean, we have you on every year, obviously, but 2 years ago, I specifically remember you talking about John Pastore. He was a redshirt freshman then, and is a guy that you thought would be a special player, and he's battled injuries, unfortunately, but now it sounds like he's healthy, and if they can keep him healthy, like, how excited are you to see a guy like that take the field and what his talent level is and what he could bring?
It's a great question, Cole. And I think that for me, the thing that stood out back then when we were talking about him is just that frame and just his makeup and what he had in terms of capabilities. And that's why I mentioned Gus Hawkins, because I think he is very similar. If you look at their body types, they're long and rangy guys. And as they continue to, like Hawkins is, I think, a really good example. I think he will help K-State this year. But next year, when he's 310 or 315, he's going to be a hoss, right? I mean, it's just kind of what it is. And that's why I think you had to get into the portal and get a couple of 2 or 3 guys. They've done that. I think Terrence Enos has fit in pretty well. Obviously, George has done a nice job. JB Nelson is a big man, and he's played some football at a big-time program. I don't think he's going to be intimidated at all. We'll see about a couple of other guys, but Talalele is kind of one of those guys. If he gets in good enough shape, he can help too, right? He's a mountain of a man. Everybody talks about Caden Massey and how big he is, but Talalele is even bigger.
Yeah, I feel like they got the answers at offensive line. It's just about, even without Fitzpatrick for the time being, it's about making the pieces fit right. And for some of those players, one thing you said about Joe Jackson is like he knows he belongs, like he knows like he's good enough to play here and stuff. I feel like that's probably all that's left for John Pastore, because he hasn't played enough yet. He just has to. They have to almost convince him, as I know you're ready.
Yeah,
you belong here.
It's a great point, DY, because there is that thing called experience and that thing called confidence.
Yep.
Sometimes they go together, and that I think that will be really important for John. I have liked him for a long time. I think he's a good kid. I think technically he seems to be pretty good. I love the body. He has become more of a physical player. And again, the bottom line is he's a good football player when he's healthy, but he's got to stay healthy, and that'll be a key for him for sure.
Well, it's a stressful first game when you talk about facing John Heacock's defense with an offensive line breaking in some new guys and the pressure that could come from different spots. And look, we talk about Avery Johnson's development and taking that next step and evolving Wyatt, but he's got to have confidence in his offensive line in order to do that, to keep his eyes downfield and not worry about, is my left tackle protecting my blind side and could I get stripped from behind, et cetera. So that's going to be such a key element. And, can they sustain the run success that they've had? 4 of the top 9 single season yards per carry marks in school history are since 2021. And so they've had a ton of success on the ground, as you know, and Connor Riley was a great offensive line coach here, which kind of leads me to the next question I was going to ask. Like, what are your thoughts on Brian LePack, who's a brilliant mind, well-liked, good coach, transitioning from tight ends to offensive line coach?
Well, let me first say I agree with you on Connor Riley. I still I believe then, I believe now that he was probably an undervalued piece. It's kind of like when Joe Klanderman took over the defense as the defensive coordinator. The job that he's done, I don't know that it gets enough run from a lot of people. Those guys are really, really fine coaches. And I think Connor will do well at the next level. I do. With that said, I'm not going to kid you. I'm excited about Brian LePack. You mentioned he's exceptionally bright. He may be transitioning from tight end coach to offensive line, but offensive line is where he kind of, grew up. And this isn't just he's learning a new position. He's an offensive line guy. He just happened to get an opportunity to start with the tight ends. And by the way, don't you think he did a pretty good job with those guys last year? We haven't even talked about either team's tight ends, and both teams are loaded at tight end, right?
Not bad.
Yeah, 100%. So I think Brian will do a good job just because I know how hard he works. I love it. I mean, he is, when you talk to him, the smarts, just kind of pops at you, don't you think? He really is a bright guy, really insightful person. And I think he'll be, if he wants to be here, I think he'll be here for a long time, do a good job. I'm impressed with what I'm seeing so far. He's done a nice job.
Absolutely. One of your guys, you talked about those tight ends. One of your guys for a few years, he's had to navigate injury a little bit too, has been Garrett Oakley.
Yep.
I know you were one of his first big fans, but my guy is kind of Will Ancio. I think he might be the most complete tight end in the room.
I love Will Ancio. I love everything about him, and I think he's going to be really good at K-State. I'm excited too for Oak because he, knock on wood, he stayed healthy so far, and we need him to stay healthy. What I would tell you guys is I think Oakley has very much improved in a lot of different areas of his game, including getting that ball tucked away. He's really done a nice job in camp to this point of catching. He's made some really nice hard catches too. And that to me shows confidence. Last year, he looked so good in camp, and then early in the year, he got dinged up, and it took him a while to kind of get back. But I continue to be a fan of his because I think I have a pretty good feel of just his mental side. He's a tough guy, right? And he loves to compete. I hope he stays healthy. And DY, you killed it with Ancio. I think he's got a chance to be really, really good. Really, really good.
Yeah, he did pretty good last year, and the spot beauty when he came in, and when they went through all those injuries at tight end, it seemed like it didn't matter who was out there; they were going to perform at a high level. It's funny we talk about Oakley, like it feels like he almost underachieved, and maybe it was unfair to say, but underachieved, giving some of the expectations that we had for him, and it felt like he missed a handful of games, which I think he did, and you still look up at his stat sheet and he got 5 touchdowns.
That's right. Yeah, when he's on the field, he's productive, and I think that's the thing you have to look at. And it's not like the other guys weren't, right? I mean, I like Andrew Metzger. I think he's got a lot of good football in him still to come. I'm really proud of Will Swanson. I got to at least mention him because when he first came here, he probably was one of the top blocking tight ends we've had. But he's just continued to work as a receiving guy. And I'm really proud of him. And I'm glad he got to come back for another year. I think he just augments the room. And maybe you mentioned Lincoln Cure, and he, who knows what kind of effect he will be out of the gate. But in time, he's going to have a big effect on K-State football. No question about that.
Kind of a room of riches there.
Yeah.
I don't envy Luke Wells of having to kind of be the one to probably come up with a pecking order there.
Yeah,
you got to keep a lot of good players happy at the same time, and that'll be no easy task. I had someone that's been at K-State perhaps almost as long as you, maybe longer. It said they think this might be the best defensive line they've seen at Kansas State. If some of these guys can, when they get to the field, they translate what they're doing in practice to the field.
That'll be the key.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is, and again, I'm not disrespecting the statement that the person made. He may be a K-State football expert. I don't know that, but we've had a lot. You think back to those 97, 98, a lot of really good football players there. But here's what I would say about now. And what excites me is we don't have a guy at the moment with Brendan Mott's experience as an example. But I'm really excited to see these guys that really now is their time. They've kind of been getting better, getting bigger, getting stronger, all of those kind of things. But you look right down the list, whether it's Toby Osensami, Chidi Obiizor, Ryan Davis. You know who looks really good to me, and I just think totally reshaped his body? In all honesty?
So
is Travis Bates.
Oh.
And nobody ever even mentions the guy.
Mm-hmm.
He will make a difference, I think, at times. Stufflebeam. Stuff's a returning starter. Nope, you're not hearing anybody talk about him. And then those interior guys, I mean, Damian, I love Damian. He's just a really, really fine football player. And Uso is such a personality, and his body's better, and he's playing better football. And there's some other guys come. I think Chidi can play inside. Ryan Davis can play inside. I think between Tui and Buddy that they have a lot of play there with that group of guys. I'm excited to see what they do. Are they, totally accomplished in what they're going to be? Not yet, but I love their skill set.
How impressed, Wyatt, are you with what Austin Romaine's become in just a couple of years?
It's hard to quantify that, Cole. It's a great question because you kind of forget, how his career started here, right? I mean, they liked him out of the gate. You could see that he was going to be good. He had really good instincts and what have you. But when Deuce Green got hurt, oh boy, right?
Yeah.
And now you look at it like it was the greatest thing that happened, because he just, over the course of 2 years, he's exploded into one of the best players in the Big 12. He's 245 pounds. He runs pretty well. He reads very, very well from what I'm told. There's just not a lot of weakness, right? I mean, you guys probably are more, and I follow it, but you're probably more Pro Football Focus oriented than I am. And he's off the charts in some of those grades in what he's doing. And I think I've said this before too. I think Desmond Purnell is one of the most underrated football players we've got on our team. I'm so proud of what he's done in terms of, position change, and guy's a darn good linebacker now. I'm pumped up for that linebacker crew too, because, there's a good mix of guys there also.
Yeah. And so I'll just plug, we actually have Dalton Wasserman of Pro Football Focus, the college show, coming on this week to talk about Austin Romaine, talk about K-State football. But yeah, they've got him as the top returning defender in the Big 12. Not just
impressive.
I mean, it's his grades. And look, sometimes people are skeptical of some of the grades, but I think nobody could deny that Austin Romaine's a terrific football player. And
yeah,
it's pretty remarkable what he's become, as a kid that was the lowest ranked recruit in his recruiting class 2 years ago. But Wyatt, you were at Big 12 Media Days a couple years ago, and like we were asking the players, who's a guy standing out? And they kept saying Austin Romaine, and we were like, what? Really? He's the lowest ranked recruit in the class. He's a true freshman. And then, Daniel Green went down. I was like, well, I guess we'll see what he's got. And, ups and downs as a true freshman, but last year really came on strong. And he's built more like that traditional middle linebacker that you and I saw a lot, and DY obviously too, but like K-State had some tremendous middle linebackers in the 90s and 2000s, and he's kind of got that body type. So excited to see what he does. I want to circle back to corner real quick, Wyatt, and get your perspective here. I mentioned this with DY before. They're inexperienced, obviously, but from a sheer athleticism, talent perspective, like if they can shrug off that inexperience, like I feel like this could be one of Kleiman and Joe Klanderman's more talented cornerback rooms. Because I think about Jaden Rowe, 6'2", 225, right? And he runs 22 miles per hour. And I think about McIntosh, one of the 5 fastest players on the team, and he's 6'3". Zayshawn Rich is 6'1". He's long. He can run too. He's a great cover guy. DY highlighted him early on last year as a guy really coming on. And then we saw flashes last year. And then, Fortenberry, if he can get on the field, like it just feels like from a sheer length talent perspective, if they can get some experience, like it could be one of the better groups and a lot of eligibility left on these guys.
It's a great point too, because I think Fortenberry as an example will fit in and be in this mix. I just do. It's hard to look at Jaden Rowe and not really get excited. For me, he looks like a Ford F-150 truck. As a matter of fact, I was visiting with a guy at practice the other day, and he was a visitor, a former K-State football player here from years ago. And Jaden walked by and he goes, "Oh my God, who is that?" Yeah. Well, that kind of tells you everything you need to know about what he looks like, right? And I think he will be a good player. You mentioned this. I really, really like McIntosh a lot. I think he and Zayshawn Rich are both really instinctual players. I'll surprise you a little bit here. It isn't probably going to be this year, but I think guys like, I'll just throw out a couple of names here. Looking at my list here, I think JoJo Scott is going to be a good player at some particular point in time.
They really liked him as a recruit. Yeah,
very much so. And I, after watching practice for 6 days, I see it. I just think, and there are, other kids too that, like an RJ Collins would come to mind, or Dominic Mitchell. They're not going to be, at the front of the list this year. But your point going back there though is there are a lot of bodies there and guys that can help and get in the mix, and that's still, we need to grow the experience meter there. But that's part of part of the process.
In terms of true freshmen, Logan Bartley could be at the front of the list, right, this year.
Logan Bartley is at the front of the list, BY.
Yeah.
I am so impressed with him. I'll tell you the truth, from spring to camp, he might have transformed his body better than most that I've been here a long time. It's amazing what he looks like, and you will love his, I guess I'll just say, football instincts.
Yeah.
There's just something about the guy. I think that they are exceptionally pleased with him. I'll just say it that way. He stands out.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to walk in there with 105, 110 guys as a true freshman and stand out.
Yeah.
But he's done it. He's done it.
Yeah, I've heard that. I guess the only other thing that I'm kind of waiting to be addressed, and maybe it already has, but I'm in a kind of I gotta see it to believe it sort of mode, is if Gunnar Maldonado can get back to Arizona form.
Correct.
Because if he is, then you got another all Big 12 player in your secondary.
No doubt. And I think all along we have known that it was going to be probably the 1st of August before he could really cut it loose.
Yep.
Yeah. And that has played out. I think they on purpose have kind of pulled the reins back on the thoroughbred, so to speak. Mm-hmm. He's not the world's biggest safety, but I remember Coach Kleiman telling me his excitement level when he committed because, for a couple of years, he was maybe Arizona's best defensive player. He was certainly their best safety.
Yeah.
And played at near an all-conference level. So if he's healthy, and I'm thinking that he will get there, he will be a major factor in the safety room. No question about that.
Another safety that didn't have a lot of size that was pretty good at K-State was Kobe Savage. So
you like Kobe, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
Oregon.
That's the thing too. I know a lot of people probably say, "Oh, he always says such nice things about all the coaches," but think about the job that Clanderman has done, Van Malone, those types of guys. Those are really good football coaches, man. And I really enjoy watching Van coach every day. And we've seen a lot of guys come through here, whether it's Kobe or Julius Brents or whoever it might be. You could name 4 or 5 other guys. One thing that keeps K-State towards the top is just, from my perspective at least, is just player development here. These guys know what they're doing.
Yeah. The thing about the defense, Wyatt, and this is more commentary than a question, but they got to get back to forcing people into mistakes too. Last year, 15 turnovers. The takeaways were not nearly at the level that we're accustomed to seeing under Klanderman and Kleiman. The prior 2 years, 2023, 2022, they led the Big 12 in turnover margin and turnovers forced, 23 and 24 turnovers. Brian Fremo has a stat. He's an advanced analytics guy. I mentioned this to Stan when we recorded the other day too. K-State last year ranked 118th in the country in net starting field position. And a lot of that was because not only the offense turned it over in really bad spots, and K-State's defense had terrible starting field position where the opponent only had to go 25, 30 yards for a touchdown, but also K-State's offense was 116th, 120th in offensive starting field position in terms of distance to the end zone on average starting drive, because the defense didn't create those mistakes and give them short fields, and the special teams had some issues and not getting the big plays that we're accustomed to seeing. And so to me, like when we talk about limiting mistakes, we also need to force more mistakes this year and get back to that, which might be a little hard early in the year with the young cornerback room and younger secondary. But, if they can do that, talk about, again, losing close games, somebody close like those, a turnover here or there, a few yards in field position could change everything.
This is why I love Cole Manbeck and then also want to hit him in the nose occasionally. I know I'm going to wake up in the middle of the night tonight and think about the difference between 15 turnovers and 23 turnovers. Right?
Well, why I was
huge difference.
That's the difference in playing
better there.
That's the difference in playing in Arlington or not playing in Arlington, probably.
Well,
and I think if
you got better in special teams too.
Yeah, Wyatt, if you look at turnover margin, I'll throw another one at you that'll make you reminisce. K-State and its 8 wins versus FBS opponents. So taking UT Martin out in the opener last year.
Yep.
13-4 in turnover margin, +9. And the 4 losses, 10-2 in turnover margin, -8. A -17 swing in just those games that they lost. And that's not even counting turnover on downs. They had like 6 or 7 of those in the 4 losses as well. Now, some of them were desperation attempts.
And to Wyatt's point, the average, the differential in field position that was created in the special teams game that didn't go Kansas State's way on top of those turnovers, that's like another turnover.
Well, you think about, not fair catching a punt at Houston last year where they could have maybe got the ball at the 30, 35. Well, what happens? The ball rolls 25 more yards. Then they're backed up at the 10, and then they throw a pick, and that's the type of, like, you're in control of that game. And yeah,
it's also the sign of a young team going through those moments for the first time, is what I will say. That's Avery Johnson in his first year starting. That's Dylan Edwards in his first year of full-time work at Kansas State. And it's all these things. That's why I feel like those are things that shouldn't happen this year.
I would agree with that. And I also think it will be a factor that Coach Katzer's been here a year. He knows the personnel better. I believe that I can tell you that I think they've I don't know that they're necessarily working on it any more than they did a year ago, but it seems like it is.
Yeah.
Does that make sense at all? I mean, I do believe there is such an emphasis on that. I think they want to be better in a lot of areas, but creating more turnovers, minimizing K-State turnovers, is right near the top of the list, and they've got to be better special teams wise in punts, punt coverage, returns, same with the kickoffs.
Snaps.
Yeah, well, snaps that's it. And you know what? That you get so spoiled with guys like Randon Plattner, and I think K-State's got 2 pretty good snappers right now. But they don't have Randon's experience, and last year it showed. And hopefully things will be better this time, because Mason Olguin's been through it a little bit. Not so much with Johnson, but Mason's been through it. We'll see. They need to be more consistent in the punting. They need to be, last year the field goal kicking was pretty good.
Yeah.
And this year there's some concern about that. So we'll see. That everybody has some of this, right? I mean, it's just kind of what it is. But
nobody's perfect.
Nobody's perfect.
No,
I do
especially
think
on July 30th, right?
Yeah, go back to the bottom line though. Got to force more turnovers. That is right near the top of the list.
I don't know that the Kansas State players and coaches probably have this attitude. I don't think you can, because it's probably too much of a holistic approach to things, even though you do have goals. But I feel like they would agree that if they're not with the team that they have this year, if they're not playing for a Big 12 championship on the first weekend in December, they'll be disappointed.
I don't know why you wouldn't think that way with what they bring to the table, with the consistency of the coaching, the returning players. I mean, we don't have the returning players in terms of starters that Arizona State has. But, I think we match most everybody else, right? And even ASU, they've got to replace a guy by the name of Cam Scadaboo. That's just in. That guy's going to be hard to replace.
Yeah, and he probably meant more to them than what even DJ meant to us. Yeah.
I don't think there's any question about that, and that's no disrespect to my fisherman buddy from Junction City. That dude is a baller now, right?
Yep.
But, total respect for Cam Scadaboo and how hard he played in the production that he brought to the table. I mean, you got to give it up for the guy. He was one tough hombre, man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm due to replace this poster back here. It's a little dated now, so I need a new one to put up there. So let's get that done.
Let's work on that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they had those expectations. We'll be honest. They had those expectations in 23 and 24 as well, and now again in 2025, which in a way it does show you how high and far Chris Kleiman has taken this program since he originally took over in for the 2019 season. Mm-hmm. But it also is, a little bit missed opportunity. I always quibble a little bit on last year. Yeah, everyone saw them as a Big 12 title contender, and so they were going into the season. But I always thought they were still a year away last year because just of so many first-time full season contributors, they were trying to break in at the same time at some of the most important spots on the field. This year, it feels like all of those important spots on the field, now you have a guy that's been there before outside of corner.
Well, I know there wasn't a Big 12 media poll in terms of where K-State will finish, but you guys were in Frisco, and it's kind of one of those things where if you have a returning quarterback in this league and there are 9 of them, you're in pretty good shape.
Yeah,
I would much rather be in Kansas State's shoes than Oklahoma State's, as an example, where they've got 2 really fine young quarterbacks, and neither one have taken a snap in a Big 12 game.
Yeah.
Not one.
That just feels like a
How would you like to live that dream?
Yeah, just think about Oklahoma State. And,
Yeah.
and usually when you count them out is when Mike Gundy pulls the rabbit out of the hat. So I won't count them completely 100% out, but it just feels like a program going in their own direction a little bit.
Yeah, I think they'll be better, and I think they feel like they can be a bowl team. But after being 3-9 and 0-9, a bowl team that'd be a big deal. That'd be a nice improvement, nice season.
Yeah, there's a few teams like that, like even Colorado, right? I feel like breaking in new quarterbacks, if they got to a bowl, I think they would be pretty thrilled with it.
Yeah. DY, you got any other questions on football? I wanted to ask Wyatt just a couple random ones here, and then we'll get him out of here because we've had him far too long. But it's always a great time talking to you, Wyatt.
I love it.
I gotta transition real quick just to get your thoughts on the basketball roster.
Okay.
K-State. I'm curious, like, what do you make of the team that Jerome Tang has assembled? I know, again, it's July 30th we're recording this, but most of the team now is here. I think there's maybe still hoping to address something with the roster, but for the most part, got some very talented guards, a couple of really talented players from Europe. Like, what do you make of the roster that Tang has assembled, lessons learned from last year and the year prior maybe, and moving ahead and looking at this 2025 team, 26 team, what they've got on the roster?
Well, let me start by saying this. I got to see the Serbian and German kids for the first time today doing things.
Yeah.
And K-State fans will enjoy watching both of these young men play. I'll just leave it at that. If you have more questions about those 2 guys, that's great, but they're both going to be rock solid players. The others, they were going today in a little bit of a scrimmage against some of the former K-State stars from years past, like Barry Brown and Clint Stewart and Jordan Enriquez and some of those guys that had been playing this summer, and several others I probably shouldn't even have started naming, but PJ wasn't there. He's at the Chris Paul deal. So you didn't have him, and Kamari McGriff was held out. But still, I was really impressed with the 2 foreign kids in looking today and watching today. Nate Johnson, Abdi Bashir, Marcus Johnson, Moby, all of those guys have gotten better in just the last, couple of weeks. I think K-State fans will be really intrigued to watch this group early on. It's going to take them some time to grow into what they want to be, I'm sure, but I do like what I see to this point.
I would say I don't want to get into too much of a commentary or about last year's team, but this feels like it'll be more a likable, enjoyable group.
I would agree with that. I think what I would say is they appear to be, and again, maybe it's unfair to say this about the 2 foreign kids, but the other kids, and I've been over there some, not every day, but I've watched quite a bit, and they want to be coached, right? I mean, the other factor too is that it's different right now. I'm really excited about Coach Driscoll and Coach Peterson and what they will bring to K-State basketball. Both are guys that have a long history of, teaching the game and having great passion for said game. It's fun watching those guys work in unison with the others, Coach Tang, obviously, and, guys like, Rodney and Marco and Reem. It's, I think this is going to be a team that you'll see that gets along and will really compete. I don't know where they're going to be picked in the league, but I think they'll be picked towards the bottom quarter of the league or so. But I think they got every chance to to be a team that could be an NCAA tournament team, if not better than that. How's that for throwing it out there?
There you go.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. And look, I'm excited to see what Matt Driscoll does. You know, we've seen Matt Driscoll coach in this league when he was at Baylor, and we've seen him come into Manhattan multiple times when he was at North Florida as well, and he gave him a real run in one year, what went to overtime. So looking forward to that and seeing where this team could potentially go. Wyatt, you got your pronunciation guide ready now with all these European players coming into the U.S.?
I asked the young man from Germany today, and he told me, and I hope I heard it right, because I can assure you of only this. I will ask him more than one time, but he told me his last name is pronounced I gotta think about it. I apologize. Rapiak.
Oh, okay.
Rapiak.
That's trickier than what we've been doing. We've just been going with Rapiak. No, that little extra, that makes it hard.
Yeah, Rapiak is what it was.
Rapiak.
And I probably should have wrote it on my chart phonetically, but on the other kid, I don't know. I didn't get a chance to talk to him today, but I've heard Kostic, I've heard Kostic, I've heard Kostic. How about you? You got one?
We went with Kostic, Kostic.
Kostic or Kostic, yeah, one of those two.
Yeah. We've done that numerous times. So yeah, that. Look, I had other questions that were fun ones for you, Wyatt, but maybe we'll do it another time because we've had you for an hour. So we'll do that another time. But hey, appreciate the heck out of you as always for coming on with us and had some fun chatting K-State football. Cannot wait for the season to get here. Hope everyone tunes into the K-State Sports Network to Stan and Wyatt on the call, as we talked about with Stan just the other day. Like, if you don't like the broadcasters on TV, sync up the radio broadcast so we can listen to Wyatt and Stan because they know what they're talking about and are well informed on the
He's already in mid-season form and ready to go.
Yeah, he's ready to go. Yeah, he was already making sure that everybody was locked in. So everybody do the same and make sure you check out our Holiday Distillery watch party. Get on over to the link in the bio to see and buy tickets potentially, and get over to the Holiday Distillery location to check it out, as we appreciate them. And I appreciate DY, all of you for listening, and Wyatt Thompson for joining the show. Thank you all for listening to another episode of 3 Mall.